Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating and honestly sometimes chaotic world of manufacturing efficiency. If you've ever looked at a massive modern factory and wondered how on earth they manage to produce so many different items without everything just grinding to a halt, well, you're in the right place. We are going to explore how modern algorithms are solving an age-old production headache. Specifically, we'll be looking at optimization methods to reduce setup time, using smart sequence strategies to keep the factory floor moving seamlessly. Let's kick things off with a pretty wild historical twist, shall we? You've probably heard the manufacturing term Dandori, which essentially refers to the setup and preparation for a process. But did you know it actually originates from traditional Japanese performing arts? It was originally used to describe the incredibly meticulous backstage preparations for kabuki theater plays, like the famous 11-act Kanade-han Shushingura. Over time, this theatrical phrase literally stepped off the stage and became a fundamental cornerstone of modern production management. Here is a quick look at our agenda for this explainer. We'll be covering 1. The origins of Dandori, 2. The setup and teardown, 3. Traditional setup reduction methods, 4. Sequence optimization strategy, and 5. The human element. Let's jump right in. Section 1. The origins of Dandori. It's actually amazing how setting a theatrical stage perfectly mirrors setting up a modern factory line. Whether you're entertaining an audience with a massive kabuki masterpiece or manufacturing goods on an assembly line, the success of the show depends entirely on the backstage crew. Think about it. If the stagehands aren't ready with the props, the play stops. Period. In the exact same way, if factory workers haven't prepped the machines and readied the molds, production completely halts. Moving on to Section 2, the setup and teardown. So, in the manufacturing world, these behind-the-scenes preparations are broken down into two very distinct phases. First up, we have Meidandori. This is the setup. Everything that has to happen before the actual work can start, like changing out a heavy mold on a machine. Then, once the job is done, we have Autodandori, which is the teardown. This is your cleanup and resetting phase. Because both the setup and the teardown eat into your precious active manufacturing time, minimizing them is absolutely crucial for any business. And this brings us to the ultimate dilemma for production managers. On one hand, you have constant production. Making the exact same product all day long means zero setups. It's highly efficient. But you're totally ignoring what the market actually wants, which causes delivery delays for other items. On the other hand, you have flexible production. You meet those diverse market demands perfectly, but it forces your team into this cycle of constant, time-consuming setting up and tearing down. So how on earth do we solve this bottleneck? Which leads us to Section 3, traditional setup production methods. Historically, factories try to work around by converting inner setup into outer setup. Now, inner setup is the standard way of doing things. You stop the entire production line to change the equipment. Outer setup means doing all that preparation in parallel off to the side without ever stopping the main line. It sounds like a total game changer in theory, right? But in reality, it requires extra physical space, extra personnel, and it aggressively drives up your operational costs. Then you have Toyota's legendary attempt, the single setup. Through obsessive, meticulous physical improvements, Toyota actually managed to reduce the time it took to exchange massive press molds from several hours down to under 10 minutes, a single digit. Hence the name. It's an absolute marvel of engineering. But let's be real, it requires highly specific physical innovations that are incredibly difficult to replicate across every single factory floor. So that begs a pretty massive question. What do you do when you literally can't move any faster on the factory floor? When physical improvements hit their absolute limit, we have to look beyond just moving faster. We have to start working smarter. And that brings us to Section 4, Sequence Optimization Strategy. This is where we really get into optimization methods to reduce setup time. And the core concept here is beautifully simple. It's all about the order in which you input tasks. Take a painting process, for example. If you paint a batch of products red and then need to paint the next batch white, you're going to spend a massive amount of time washing the equipment so the colors don't mix, right? But if you optimize that sequence, starting with white, then moving to yellow, and finally to red, that transition from light to dark paint dramatically reduces the washing time you need between colors. And you can build this into a wider strategy across almost all types of manufacturing. The golden rule here is that the order of operations dictates the speed of the setup. If you're machining parts, you want to sequence the work from thin parts to thick parts. doing heat treatments. It is way faster to adjust your furnace temperature from low to high in stages rather than randomly jumping back and forth and waiting for it to cool down. But, okay, here is the catch. Determining that perfect sequence is a total mathematical nightmare for the human brain. Let's say you only have 6 products to manufacture today. To find the absolute best order, you have to calculate 6 factorial. That's 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Just for 6 products, you're looking at 720 different possible combinations to evaluate. Now imagine a real working factory floor. What happens when you scale that up to 15 or 18 products? The permutations become literally astronomical. A human planner simply cannot calculate the optimal sequence fast enough. It's just not possible. And this math proves exactly why modern production scheduling software is an absolute necessity today. To conquer this algorithmic complexity and automatically select the exact sequence that minimizes your total setup and teardown times, specialized software is really the only viable path forward. Finally, let's head into Section 5, the human element. There's this famous Japanese maxim, Dandori hachibu shigoto nibu, which translates to 80% setup, 20% work. It basically means that if your preparations are perfect, the actual execution is practically a breeze. Think about it from the perspective of the workers on the floor. If setups are constant, chaotic, and poorly planned, it is incredibly frustrating. But if a scheduling software perfectly optimizes the sequence, the setup and teardown processes become smooth, logical, and predictable. Mastering Dandori makes everyone on the floor happier. I'll leave you to ponder this final thought. We spend so much time looking at the numbers, reducing lead times, cutting costs, deploying fancy algorithms. But when digital tools perfectly sequence our work, they ultimately eliminate that daily friction and chaos on the manufacturing floor. So isn't this technology actually elevating the human experience just as much as it's helping the bottom line? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Keep thinking about how we can work smarter, not harder, and I'll see you next time.